All right, guys. So today we're going to be taking a look at a headphone from the company Nothing. Now, Nothing has pretty much made a name for themselves, not only as being like a fashion style brand, but it's kind of interesting the way that their products integrate with each other, the way that they look like almost identical. There's definitely a theme when it comes to Nothing products. And so today we're checking out the Nothing Headphones A. Now, this is their more budget-friendly option because this one comes in retailing at $199, although right now on Amazon you can actually pick them up for $169. Now, this is definitely a savings when it comes to their Nothing Headphones 1, which come in at $299, but we're going to kind of see if this is worth the $200 price tag. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the design. And in typical Nothing fashion, when it comes to their headphones, their earbuds, these are available in quite a few different colors. Now, I have the white version here, but it's also available in black. There's a pink model, there's yellow. So there's definitely something for everybody if you're just looking for a specific look. I do like the fact that the ear cups, or at least on the outside, it looks very flat. It's kind of like the AirPods Max. There are several different ways to control these. There's a button, there's also like this little wheel, and there's a toggle switch. And I actually think the little wheel is kind of reminiscent of the AirPods Max that has the little dial. It has that same like click when you roll it. The headphones themselves, I'm actually surprised at how small they seem, because when I looked at the marketing and when I saw it on some people's heads, I thought it actually looked kind of large, but they're not large in person. They don't really weigh a whole lot, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more padding on the top. There's just kind of like this silicone material. It's very thin, but there's definitely weight enough that you're going to feel some of it on the top of your head after you're wearing these for a long period of time. Now, the ear cups on these are pleather. It is memory foam, so it is really soft. And these do not fold inwards, but they do swivel so that these will lay flat. And that's kind of important because the only case that they include in these, which I'm not a huge fan of, it's just this little drawstring pouch, which is definitely nothing that's going to keep these protected from being crushed. It's just going to keep these from getting scratched if you're going to throw them in a bag. And then the only other accessories they include is it does come with a 3.5mm cable and a USB-C cable, which you obviously could use for charging, but you can also use the USB-C cable to listen to these in wired mode. But speaking of the charging, battery life is very, very impressive in these. This is definitely much better than the Headphones 1 that Nothing has released, because on a full charge, if you listen to these with the noise canceling off, you can get 135 hours of battery life. Now, even with the noise canceling on, you're still going to get 75 hours of battery life. And if you use these in LDAC mode, which these do offer, it is going to drop the battery life down a little bit more than that. So do keep in mind, it just kind of depends on which mode you use these in, and that's going to kind of decide how much battery life you get out of them. Now, some other features is it is Bluetooth 5.4, so it does support multi-point connection. It is high-res wired and wireless because, like I said, it does support LDAC. It does come in with an IP52 rating, so not a whole lot of water protection here, but you are getting a pretty decent amount of dust protection. So this is nice to know if you're on a job site or if you're at the beach, you don't have to worry about sand or dust or anything like that. And then it also has a low lag mode, which you would go in the app to turn on, and this is if you're going to use these for movies or games. This just kind of helps cut down on lag, so you make sure that the mouths are actually moving with the words that you're listening to. And then the app also allows you to have spatial audio. And I'm not going to go deep into this because I've always said I'm just not a huge fan of this, but they do have a cinema spatial audio mode and a music spatial audio mode, but neither one of these are good for music. Spatial audio is pretty decent for movies and games, but for the most part, I just use all of my headphones and earbuds without ever actually using spatial audio. Now, another thing that's very important within the app are the different EQ modes. Now, there's different ways that you can set this. There's a pretty simplified one if you just want to adjust a few things. There's an 8-band equalizer if you want to be a little bit more technical. And then there is a community of different EQs that are uploaded. So you can just download these and it'll just go straight to the headphone. And I will say that you are going to want to EQ these. I am not like the biggest fan of the way that these are tuned out of the box, but we'll get into that once we get to the sound. And then another thing you can do within the app is switch between the different noise canceling modes. Now, this is something I was not expecting with these headphones. I was expecting some decent noise canceling, but not something that's probably great. And in my opinion, I think the noise canceling on these definitely compete with the higher end brands like Sony, Bose, Sennheiser, because as soon as you turn the noise canceling on, which by default it is set to high, you immediately hear everything just shut off. I have a desktop PC next to my monitor. I just couldn't hear anything from it as soon as I turned them on. If there's somebody talking, it even does a really good job of blocking that out. So I would say that this is comparable when it comes to noise canceling to those more expensive models. But within the app, you can switch it between basically a low, a medium, and a high. And then there is an adaptive where it will just kind of switch it into a different noise canceling mode depending on the noise and the things around you. So that's actually pretty impressive. Now, the transparency mode on these, I would say, is just okay. There is a little bit of digital noise, but it is still serviceable as far as being able to hear the things around you. It just doesn't sound as natural as some of the other ones that I've tested. Now, if you are going to use these for taking phone calls, these do have 5 microphones total. It is using some AI to try to block out some of your surroundings, and I think for the most part, it does a pretty decent job during calls. But you guys can be a judge by listening to a quick test here. So here is a quick mic test outdoors using the Nothing Headphones A. It's not really a windy day, but I can hear traffic off to the side. But this is just to give you an idea of what it would sound like if you were to take a call. So now let's talk about the sound, because the drivers that these are using are 40mm titanium coated drivers. And again, like I said earlier, in my opinion, just if you took these out of the box, put them on your head, and then just started listening, it is a little bass heavy. It's a little too bass heavy in my opinion, where it does affect the mids and the highs. I feel like it's kind of making it sound a little too muddy. But these respond extremely well to EQing. So as soon as I went in, and I actually just used the simple EQ, and I just kind of adjusted a few things, it definitely fixed these quite a bit. It made them sound very clear, very clean. It still retained the same bass, so you can still get quite a bit of punch and it not affect everything else. And I'm kind of surprised that Nothing didn't already have it tuned this way out of the box. And that muddy sound that it had was just kind of throwing me off a little bit. So again, it's easy to fix this. It's nice that these adjust as well as they do to EQing, but I am going to say this though, a lot of consumers aren't necessarily going to want to go into the app or even think to go into the app to fix the sound. A lot of people think they just sound the way that they do just simply by putting them on your head. So that might be a negative for a lot of people that aren't going to dive a little bit deeper and then go in and play around with some of the sound settings. But again, once you do, you can definitely have these sound pretty dynamic, pretty exciting. I still think for the most part, even if you try to dial a lot of things back, it's still going to have a very aggressive low end, but it is quite punchy and it can be quite fast depending on, again, the setting that you use. I'll show you my settings here. I did have to turn, there's like a bass boost or bass impact mode. I dialed that all the way back, and that got rid of some of the boominess, but it didn't, again, take away from how aggressive or how punchy the bass could be. The mids on these, I could get them to sound quite forward, so it did transition pretty well across a lot of the different genres that I listen to. It does really good with rock and metal. It also can do really well with pop and hip hop, obviously because of that low end. But even with classical or easy listening or anything that's more vocal or instrument driven, it does an excellent job here because the treble on here is actually nice and bright. It's not like an overly harsh treble, but it does balance out pretty well with the low end that these have. And the only other thing that I do want to point out, and this is for people that like to listen to their music loud, I actually noticed that most of the time I was listening to these almost at max volume, and I don't normally do that with headphones. So in my opinion, I feel like they probably could have been 2 or 3 notches even louder. So like those times where you just want to listen to your music extremely loud. Now, I don't know if they did this just to kind of, make it where it's safe to listen to these, or if it's because they don't want these to distort at higher volumes. But there's definitely something here that's holding them back a little bit. Now, when it comes to the soundstage and the sound imaging, honestly, this is going to come down to if you're listening to these with the noise canceling on or the noise canceling off. Because with the noise canceling on, you immediately sound like you're in this isolated room that's not very large. But with the noise canceling off, there's definitely quite a bit of space, and it makes it sound more like you're in a medium to large size room. But no matter what, these do a really good job of being able to tell where different sounds are coming from. So my overall opinion is this. I think these headphones are more than just a good looking pair of headphones. I definitely think the technology or whatever they're doing with the noise canceling, which I do know that they're using 2 feed forward mics and 2 feedback mics, whatever with that combined, it's very impressive how much these are blocking out. And the sound quality, once you play around with the EQ settings, is very impressive. But guys, that wraps up my video on the Nothing Headphones A. Thank you so much for checking out this video. Thank you so much for checking out all the other videos. And as always, make sure to stay tuned for more.